Welcome to Rise with AI, the podcast that spotlights trailblazers in e-learning and professional training, inspiring you to reach new heights, create impact, scale your vision, and empower others. I'm your host, and today we're joined by Genesis Eakes, founder and president of Genesis Eakes International, a company dedicated to transformational leadership and helping organizations build people-centric cultures that drive mission accomplishment. With over 25 years of experience in leadership development, Genesis has worked with leaders across business, government, and community sectors, emphasizing the integration of values and creation of cultures of honor. Her current projects in Africa and Southeast Asia highlight her global impact. Genesis, it's an honor to have you. Let's start with a fun question. Genesis, your name evokes the idea of new beginnings. If you could start a brand new movement or initiative to transform leadership globally, what would it be? And what's the first step that you'll take to bring it to life?
Oh, that's a great question. And yes, when you have a name like Genesis, it definitely has the implication of new and new beginnings. There's new starts. And it's interesting because I think that's kind of what my life has been about, is lots of new starts and helping others to be able to start fresh. And so if I were to start a movement, especially in the leadership space, that's where my head is with helping organizations and cultures. I think the movement that I would love to be able to start is a movement where people understand who they are, who they were created to be, and their gift that they get to give to the world. One of my mentors said for years, it took me a long time to really understand the implications, but they said there's two great days in a person's life. The first is the day that they are born. The second is the day they find out why. And I think that is so important as we are, I know you are in the tech industry mainly and helping people with this integration of tech and with all of the things that technology can do, which I love. We're able to do this podcast today because of technology. So grateful for that. But in the midst of all of this technology, one of the things that gets lost is, what does it actually mean to be human? Human element. And even though humans created the technology, somewhere in this whole system, if we look at what's happening across our world, there's a loss of humanity, which increases anxiety. We're seeing a lot more stress and burnout, and because there's this loss of, who am I and what was I created to do? If tech can do all of this, then what do I do? So I think if I were to spark a movement, I'd say, no, you are uniquely created. You are here on purpose, and technology is here to accentuate what you do, accentuate who you are, but you are uniquely you, and you still have something to give to this world. And we need everybody. We need everybody to show up in the uniqueness of who they are.
Is there you have worked with leaders across various sectors, right? What has been the most surprising thing that you have actually learned about leadership that applies universally?
Let's see. The thing that I would say that is universal is that there's no certainty. I think it's interesting because when you are not in a leadership position, maybe you are working for a company where if you have government leaders or industry leaders, it's very easy to be able to put them up on a pedestal, on a platform, and say, oh, they must know the answer. They are the experts, so they know the answer. They know what the future is. They have all of the answers. But when you actually work with them, the level of uncertainty right now is crazy. None of us can predict the future. If we could, we would have predicted the pandemic. We would have predicted all kinds of interesting things, but there is no certainty. But what there is collaboration. There is the ability to be able to work together and to not be scared of what we don't know. And I think universally right now, there's so much uncertainty, and where I get to help and bring some clarity in the situation is to help reduce that anxiety and take the pressure off. Because when we interpret it through our own lens, we're constantly thinking that someone else, I don't know the answer, but everybody else knows the answer. And it's not necessarily true. They're looking for leaders all over. I was speaking with a major CEO for a company in Australia just about 10 days ago. And it was interesting because he was trying so hard to be able to bring some changes to his company. His company is struggling. It's got the metrics are not what they need to be. And he's saying, we're trying to innovate, but I can't get my people to tell me what's going, I need more from them. I need more transparency. I need more feedback. But they feel isolated at the top because of that pedestal. And people think, oh, they have all of the answers instead of contributing and helping them.
Interesting. I would love to also highlight that your transformation, transition from corporate HR to also founding Genesis was really inspiring. What was actually the pivotal moment that led you to start your own consulting firm and also helping other leaders?
Sure. I don't know if there's like one specific moment. So I've had a varied background. Like you mentioned, I started out working for companies and in that corporate space in HR and training. And one of the things that I started realizing is that most of the HR departments or and even L&D departments, what they typically have things handed to them. They have mandates that are given to them. And then the work that was transformational, they typically hired a consultant to help. And it was someone from the outside that would help bring that work about. And so when I started seeing this trend, because at first I thought it was just, oh, maybe that's just this industry does that or this particular company. But as I worked my way through different industries from manufacturing to transportation to finance and insurance and that sector, I started realizing that that was more universal than I originally thought. And so looking and starting developing some skill sets to be able to bring that transformational change, because I started to see the value in what consultants bring. Because if you are inside an organization, we have a statement in the US that we say it's like you can't see the forest through the trees, meaning that if you are in this situation, there's a perspective that you're missing. And sometimes it's really difficult to bring the change because it all looks normal to you. And so being able to be an outside perspective and to be able to reflect in and bring some, what are we learning in other sectors, and to be able to bring that voice that helps bring transformation was something that was really resonating with me. And like you said, it goes with the name to be able to start something new. So when people need a transformation, when they're saying, okay, we've plateau, because every organization does them. It's the life cycle of business. Products will hit a plateau, people hit plateaus. So whenever people hit this plateau and they're ready to spark something new, that's usually the place where myself as a principal consultant or my company comes in and helps to accelerate that transformation and to kickstart that growth again for them.
That, and you actually mentioned the story about the CEO just now, and it seems like there was a little bit of disconnect, right, between the top and also the main working force of the company. So how would you then actually go in and really help this organization? Because I know that your work emphasizes a lot about culture of honor, and how does that actually play in this setting?
So the first thing that is a challenge, I'll say it this way, the first thing that's a challenge for most leaders is to recognize that they are the problem. It's very easy because typically, even as a parent, so I'm a parent and a grandparent now.
Wow.
My granddaughter just turned 1 year old. And so it's a fun time in the life for our family. But I think when I think about my children, and it applies to leaders as well, it's
Mm.
always if the children are not behaving, then I would say, oh, you need to stop, like you need to behave, you need to come in line, you need to adjust. But what we've recognized over time is that people, whether it's children or it's people on your team or in your company, whatever you are leading, people become like you. You reproduce what you are, not what you want. So if
Mm.
you are seeing things showing up in your team or in your culture, you have to look at yourself first. What am I doing that's producing this? Because we're all producing seeds in people's lives that are growing and developing, whether we want it to or not. So one example that I help leaders understand, because it's kind of like, I'm not sure, because it's easy for leaders to say, like, if you are in the operations department, then we need more tech. That's one of the big things that are being asked for right now. We need a bigger tech budget because we have to automate more. We need this versus, and then the CFO and the finance team is saying, we don't have the finances to give you, we can't fund this project, we've got to do this. The CEO is saying, I need you guys to do more with less. Marketing is saying we have to, like, so there's all of these competing agendas, and they're pointing the finger and saying, if we had tech, then we could solve it, so it's their fault. No, you're right. And so it abdicates that personal responsibility. So the first thing that I always do whenever there's issues within an organization, it's always a leadership issue first. Because what happens in the boardroom is a microcosm of what's happening in the rest of the organization. So, for example, like when you asked about this particular organization in Australia, so what would I do to help them? And what we're talking about is we've got to fix the leadership team first. And when I say fix, it's not like they're broken, but we have to get them working together. We've got to get them understanding the value because, like I just mentioned, oftentimes you see silos within the organization. The silos start at the executive table. They don't start, they might be felt from the employees that are all the way down on the front lines. They can feel it. They know that, oh yeah, I can't go over there because that's a different department. I can't talk to them. Or there's no mechanisms, communication mechanisms back and forth. It's not just really built that way, but it starts at the executive table. So, first of all, we have to, if we can't fix what's happening, the communication, the way that they treat each other, their understanding of themselves, how they want to do that, if we can't adjust the culture at the executive table, then we have no chance to be able to impact it in the rest of the organization. So it starts there first. John Maxwell, he's another one of my mentors. I've had the opportunity to work with him and travel with him all around the world. And he's considered the number one leadership expert in the world. And he's famous for saying everything rises and falls on leadership. And so it's that idea that everything rises and falls on leadership, which means the greatest successes and the greatest obstacles and challenges are all a result of those who are leading because they have the ability to impact all of the departments, how they work together, how they function. They have the ability to impact that. So when we can get that executive team working, you mentioned the culture of honor. It's a statement that I came up with just trying to help describe what does it look like when everyone is fully empowered and they have ownership, personal ownership. I'm not blaming someone else for what's happening. There may be circumstances, yes, do you think everything's connected? We understand that. So this lever over here triggers this one. Everything's all connected, but but I'm not a victim of the connectedness. So if operations isn't doing what I need them to do over on my end, because maybe I'm customer service and there's something that's faulty in that space and I'm in customer service, I don't have to be a victim of what's happening in operations. I'm fully empowered to be able to resolve things with the abilities and the resources that I have available to me. So because I get to bring my own unique self and my own creativity, my own innovation to the table. So when we stop blaming and justifying and doing that, the next thing that happens is that humans have an incredible ability to be innovative and creative and to solve very complex problems. And when we are released to do that, we create stuff like AI, right? Which would be unfathomable even a generation ago.
Beautiful. Yes, when we actually have the space to actually think of to create innovation and creativity, you know that the organization is really doing well. So yeah, if we were to take a step back, how would you actually suggest leaders to actually prevent being the tone of the organization, or the person that is actually limiting the organization from moving towards innovation?
Okay. Yes. If you want to, I think it starts with understanding. I think first of all, if we want to take that step backwards, it's recognizing the influence that you have. So if you are that leader in that space, because oftentimes when again you just think through your own lens and you're like, well, I'm just me. What do you mean? And we don't recognize that we're creating a lid that is hindering others' growth and development. So understanding that that's possible, it starts there, that awareness piece. So once we understand that, the next thing is really understanding who is each person created to be. What is their unique gift to the world? Because I can't lead if I'm supposed to lead a team, but I don't know who they are. Then I don't know how to position them and help them grow and help get the best out of them. Oftentimes we've had several generations that have focused highly on production, and production is king, and you have to hit these numbers, and you have to beat your numbers every time. And what has happened is that it's produced a lot of leaders that think in terms of production only. And so
Doing,
they
yes.
employees almost like, if you think about it like your hand. So my brain is telling my hand to move in a direction. And so I look at it, I'm like, okay, hand, go and pick up this pen, go do this, right? And I'm telling my hand what to do. If my hand talks back to me, I would be very scared. That would not be good. But we treat employees in the same way. So it's more that I go and do this for me, come back and tell me when it's done. Go do this, come back and tell me when it's done. And so I'm treating it like it's a piece of myself. And so when I treat it like that, then what happens is that we're limited to my thinking alone, because I'm not getting your thinking. I'm not getting your ideas. I'm telling you exactly, I'm being very prescriptive. You have to do it like this. Once you're done, come back, like my hand, go do this, right? Tell me, when you've completed that, I'll give you another task. And so people have humans, the human part of us has become smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller. And I think that's one of the most scary parts that I see of employees and people worldwide. They're scared of the technology revolution, because anything that you can tell someone else to do, if I can say, hey, I go do this, come back and tell me, I can now program AI to do it for me. So then if I'm in that position with a boss that treats me that way, I can see then my position's gonna be made redundant. Then who am I? What do I contribute? And then I start thinking that I am valueless, that I have no place, I have no meaning, and all of that is not true. It's not true. We've just bought into the lie that says I'm only capable of doing what someone else tells me to do. But when we can start at the movement where we started at the beginning of our conversation, if we can spark that flame that helps people understand, no, you're not the same as a computer. You're not the same as tech. You are human, and to be human and it is unique, and you have a unique voice and a unique way to see things. When we can collaborate together and hear all of those voices, that creates the space for the innovation, because all innovation is preceded by contemplation. It is not possible to innovate anything without thinking and and really contemplating on that first. That's the birthplace of all innovation. We can
That's
do that.
powerful.
It's beautiful.
Beautiful. And I love that. I, it seems like leaders also have to be really good in communication. So the way that they actually communicate, like you mentioned, it just instead of instructing, you should have an open dialogue. That's what I'm hearing.
Yes, open dialogue that allows feedback. So let me tell a quick story.
Go ahead.
So this is not my finest moment. This is where, and really well, where I started learning the concept. So it was many years ago when my oldest son he was a teenager. He was an early teenager. I think he was maybe 13 at the time, something like that. And he had a school project and he asked for some help with it was Sunday in the afternoon and he says, "Mom, can you help me with this school project?" Of course. Yeah, happy to help you with the project. So he tells me about the project. And as he starts unfolding the scope of this project, I start realizing this is a big project that's due the next morning. And I'm like, oh my goodness. And so I'm starting to feel the weight of what's happening. And then I find out he was assigned this project 2 weeks ago. So, of course, he has not done anything on the project for 2 weeks. So, this is a project that should have taken 2 weeks. It's now compressed into this very tight time frame. It's due the next day, all of this pressure. And he's saying, help. So, I'm like, okay. So, of course, yeah, I'm a good mom. I don't want my son to fail. So I start telling him how to do the project. I'm like, okay, here we go. Boom, boom, boom. And I get very directive, very like in my leader hat mode. And here's how we can do it. We can accomplish the goal. We can still get the good grade. This will work. It's fine. Well, the project had the ability to be very creative. It was one of those projects where the teacher says you can do it like this, or, you choose, you be creative and how you want to do it. So my son comes back to me and I tell him, here's how we're going to do it. And he says, no. And I'm like, what do you mean, no? You can't just tell me no. You asked for help. This is how we're going to get it done. He's like, no, no, mom, I want to be creative on this. I think I can create this whole game and we can make it like this. And I was very upset at him. I was like, no, we have no time to do it like that. In fact, these are the words that I told him. I told him he lost his ability, his chance to be creative. I said, if you wanted to be creative, you needed to start 2 weeks ago. Now we have no time for creativity. We're doing it like this. All right. So that's from a leadership perspective and even a mom perspective, that's a terrible answer. But I told you, I was frustrated in the moment and feeling the pressure. And this is what happens. Leaders do this all the time. We feel the pressure and then it just comes out. It's like, nope, we have no time for innovation. We have no time for creativity. We're just doing it like this. Anyway, my son, being my child, he didn't take that as an answer. So we ended up in this big argument. So then I was very frustrated. My husband finally comes in and says, okay, let's just stop this for now. He can go work on the project. I had some other things I needed to do. I was running some errands to get prepared for my week at work. So I left to go and run my errands and do all of this. And meanwhile, I'm frustrated. I'm like, he's going to fail. I'm thinking all of these things in my head. He's not going to do it. There's no time. There's all of the, I'm thinking the worst case scenario. So finally, I come home because I keep thinking they're going to call me and say, hey, mom, come back. I'm so sorry. Help me do this. They never called. So finally, I come home and I'm expecting chaos and just, all of this. We're trying to get this done. We can't do it. But it was complete calm. Everything in the home was all peaceful. And I was like, what's happening? So then I thought maybe they just chose not to do the project. And then
Right.
I'm even more mad. I'm like, failure is not an option. What are you thinking? So I go and I find my husband and he's just relaxed. He's watching some sports on the TV. And I'm like, what about the project? What are you doing? And he's like, Dad, did you know our son is a genius? And I'm like, what do you mean? He's like, oh my gosh, he's so good. He's brilliant. He's like, he's got it almost all figured out. He's almost completely finished right now. He's just wrapping up the last part. And I'm like, no way. Are you kidding me? So I go and check on my son, and sure enough, and it was brilliant. He got high marks on the project, everything.
Wow.
But what I learned in that was that the way that my brain functions to do it what he wanted to do, it would take me 2 weeks to complete it. For him to do the project the way that I saw it needed to be done, both of us were right. But the way that our brain functions and the way that our own creativity is different. And so the way that I was telling him to do it, it would have taken him 2 weeks to do it my way. And so that was this really interesting, just in my face example of just how different we are. Even though I raised him, he's my, my child. And, I thought I knew him, and I do, right? I thought I knew him so well, but that was a stark example of really understanding, no, we need to allow people the space to bring their own ideas. If I tell them how to do it, it's going to be, maybe it's only the way that my brain works, and they're going to come up with something even better. If we allow them that open conversation, we can talk about what to do, right? The teacher in the assignment that says, here's what needs to be accomplished. The how, let's have a dialogue about it. If you get stuck, let's talk about that. Then we can both add perspectives, but it's not just and it has to be done this way. That's what limits us. So it limits our creativity and innovation.
Yeah, what an incredible story. Because if you and your son has this dilemma, and this different perspective in viewing innovation and creativity, alone organization leader leading a team of people, everyone have their own strength and weaknesses, and also certain things that we can't foresee. Yeah, this is a very, very important piece in leadership. Also divert back the conversation to technology, because just now you mentioned about how AI is also transforming businesses. How do you actually see AI impacting leadership development and also organization culture in the coming years?
So I think we're kind of at a precipice. We're at this interesting moment in time, interesting moment in history, where we can choose. We can choose which way to go, how it's going to impact, and history will tell us, what did we as a whole world society, what did we choose? But I think one of the things that needs to be considered right now is remembering, what are we doing it for? Because technology, just like anything else, it's supposed to be a help, and it can be. It can
Yes.
be this beautiful help. It can be this beautiful way that propels our society and our world forward. It's amazing if you think about just in the last 100 years what technology has advances that technology has done that has made our world such a better place. But what we've got to be careful of is, what do we not want it to do? So one of the trends that I started seeing, and this is probably within the last quarter, maybe, so fairly recent trend that's emerging, because as technology is being more accessible to more people, is people are able to create the AI bots or the AI agents. And so, and which is great on one hand. So you're seeing a lot of leaders, because typically in organizations right now, what we're seeing is that at that little level where you would maybe have an assistant that would work with you, they are replacing that personal assistant with an AI agent, which is great because that AI agent can do all kinds of stuff. And so if the company has this ability, that's fantastic. Great. Well, the trend that is interesting is that people are now sending their AI agents to meetings for them. And so there was this leader that was talking that normally has like this meeting. It's a brainstorming meeting where they are talking. They're working on their collaboration. They're working on their, how are we going to move this project forward? And typically it's very well attended. People show up to this meeting and they get a lot of things out of it. And the person that was hosting the meeting, it's usually about 10 or 12 people are supposed to be in this meeting. Everybody replied, yes, I'll be there. And then when they show up to the meeting, about 75% of the attendees were AI agents. And they're like, what are we, and what happens in this moment? So they were talking about it, and it had different implications for them in their environment. But I think this is the trend that we have to be careful of, is that if collaboration, creativity, innovation, all of that happens because of our ability to trust one another. And it's the human capital that we have, the
Yes.
relationship capital with each other, where we feel psychologically safe, because not every idea is a good idea. We have all kinds of stuff that we think about. But if we're just going to ideate, if we're going to throw some things out there, we want to feel like it's safe. that it's a safe place to be able to share ideas and to not be judged or criticized or be made smaller. It doesn't have to be a good idea. Like, okay, that one, no, that's not going to work. Let's work on this. But that's where you build on each other. You build on the concepts of one another, but you're also building relationship at the same time. So that if I need something from you, or if our ability to work together, and that collaborative part of it is at the center of it is trust. And it's the relationship capital that we have with one another, that we can show up with our authentic self and contribute the best of who we are. But if all you're seeing is my AI agent, all you're interacting with is my AI agent, we're breeding more and more disconnection. And we're actually
Yeah.
fragmenting our culture. We're fragmenting the trust underneath it. And so, what we're going to see when culture starts to fragment in that way, you see more disagreements, you see more fighting, you see more conflict. And you see more anxiety because I don't actually know you. I just know your AI agent and I don't even know it. So and then when we have to interact together in person, I don't know how to be with you because I don't know what's expected because we're not learning that. We're not growing that. So I think that's one of the things that we need to be considering and really be mindful of. If a meeting is important enough to require someone's presence, then we need to actually be present. There are things that are appropriate to offload to AI and to technology, but there's things that are not appropriate. And you've got to think about like those second order consequences. Like what happens? So maybe in the short term, I gain efficiency. But if we're only gearing towards efficiency, you can't be efficient enough to create. Creativity isn't born out of that space. It's like that again, it's the trust and the innovation and the contemplation and what are we doing? And that's sometimes messy and not straightforward and it's not linear. And so we've got to be able to create space for that and make sure that our culture is being protected, that we protect the value of the human connection, the connection with one another so we don't fragment into more and more silos.
I love where this conversation is heading because especially the work that I'm doing with marketing and AI, a lot of times in the field that I'm in, a lot of people will of course want to say, oh, we can replace this or replace that position, things like that. But I think what you are sharing right now is so core to the human nature, which is the culture, our value, how we actually communicate with each other, and how we go about continuing protecting the emotion that we also have. And that's the process that we have is only through conversation like innovation, creative work, like you mentioned. Otherwise, if we take that away from us, then all the other emotions, the negative ones, will surface like you have shared. So that's really, really powerful message right here. And in terms of technology, of course, we have to be responsible. We have to be very conscious in where we are actually embedding into the business processes. But at the same time, have you seen any specific technology that really enhance your business or your clients' engagement, or maybe project management?
Yeah, so I think that one of the biggest things is the use of, like I was mentioning, the AI agents and the AI bots. And even it's stuff that's more universally accessible using the AI tools like Chat GPT, or there's different versions that are similar with like open source AI. We're seeing that trend as well. So my daughter-in-law works for a large multinational firm as well. And they started doing training within their organization on how like training frontline employees on how to use chat gpt. Where is it appropriate? How do you use it? What do you use it for? How can it help you? And so I think that's a trend that we're seeing, and it's really helpful. It's helpful for those things, as long as we know what to use it for and how to help serve the human and serve the connection. You can utilize it in amazing ways. You mentioned marketing. I was speaking with a new business owner in Africa about maybe a week ago. The CEO and founder of this organization they're hitting some scale right now, and they're really wanting to get their marketing in alignment. And they're like, man, we're lagging behind on some of our systems for marketing and some of those pieces. And so they were asking me some questions about it. And they're like, we have this opportunity to automate all of this stuff with some AI tools. And then I was telling them, I said, yes, once you create the content, there's all of these tools that can make it run and make sure that it hits all your platforms and does all of this beautiful stuff. And you don't have to physically do it yourself, which is fantastic. I said, but the thoughts have to come from somewhere.
Yes.
The thoughts still have to originate, or in order to be, I think, and this is my opinion, of course, there are people that don't start with that. They're like, they just throw something into an AI and they have the AI create everything for them. But I think the ones that we're going to see the longevity of companies, and the ones that have that authentic resonance to them, have that human thought and that human voice, that is because we are made to be generative. As
Yes.
humans are generative. And so when we are in that space, like our conversation today, this is a generative conversation. It wasn't prescripted. And so you said something like, oh, that's interesting, and it makes me think of something. And then we have this beautiful, authentic
Dialogue.
conversation.
True.
And when people approach marketing in that way, so that it's a conversation, so that as they are having thoughts as a company, or however they want to present that across, they get to present those thoughts, and they're thinking about their consumers on the other side. They're talking to humans. They're not talking to AI bots. So be generative, be um,
And be authentic.
and be authentic. Exactly.
Mhm.
But in order to be authentic, you have to think the thoughts. You have to think them and
Yeah.
feel comfortable that your thoughts are valuable and they deserve to be shared.
Yes, I love that companies are also empowering their staff to also learn AI in regulated way, in a responsible way. And even I myself, or like peers around me, have also started to just send their staff on a training like that, because it's just so important that we don't over rely on AI for that creation piece like you mentioned. And but certainly to also enhance the culture in the company, one thing that works is to, some people can create GBT to actually have a profile to actually help to coach, or even just not entirely to replace a coach, but to really just help answer certain questions to the staff if the leader, they are not around. So this could be one of the really good use cases. And
Yes.
Genesis, I would also love to hear, what are your primary goals for Genesis International in the next 6 to 12 months, particularly with your projects in Southeast Asia and Africa?
Yeah, I think so. My goals for this year, we're working on a big project, like you mentioned, in Africa. It's a very large project that involves a shared value initiative that is kind of the intersection between government and education and business, really helping to accentuate the entire nation that we're working in. So that's a big project, of course, because it's not small. And so we've got some big projects and things that we're moving forward on, that big stakeholder meetings that are coming up. So we're working on putting those things together, and again, helping them through their own. I'm not the tech person, but I know I have got great tech people like yourselves that we're connected with, that help with some of those projects and help us get better at and be efficient in the ways that are appropriate, so that we have more space to be innovative and creative. So that's main project for in Africa. Some of the other work around Southeast Asia. We're actually looking to grow in that sector, looking to be able to expand the footprint. I know there is a lot of challenges in the area, and businesses are looking for that authentic voice, and they're looking for the ability to help us do this. I think we have leaders that are in that space, and they're seeing what's coming, and they see the opportunities that are available with technology and what's happening within their own companies and their workforce, and they want something different, but they're not sure how to get there. And so that's where we're looking to really expand our footprint in that area and really help those organizations to be able to grow and create cultures of transformation. This is one of the things, sometimes transformation gets locked into like, okay, we did a transformation movement or we did this initiative one time. So like they'll call it like a digital transformation. We did a digital transformation. So now we all use digital. We have like new tech and all of this stuff. But what really needs to happen in order for us, the rate at which our culture is shifting and changing and moving as a whole society, we need people that are resilient enough to be able to constantly, we need generate new and creative and be in that space. So it's not like a fixed thing. It's when we have a culture of transformation, it's a culture that continually adapts to what happens and being able to be resilient enough to handle that, because sometimes we want it to just be, well, I did that once. Like, aren't we, you want me to change again? You want me to change again? And it's like, yeah, we have to be able to adapt. And as humans, we're capable of doing that, but we have to create cultures that can sustain it. Otherwise, we have burnout. I think that's the, if we don't create the right culture around it that can handle the rate of change and that continual change, then we do see high levels of anxiety and burnout
Yes.
and the stress. And so we want healthy, whole people that are able to be creative in the right ways.
Isn't that ironic that we are using AI to help us with our processes, but in terms when we are not managing it well, we ourselves become the opposite of what we really want. That's why the work that you do is so important. And I love this conversation, but I have 3 rapid questions that I also want to ask you. And so I want you, Genesis, to just think of the first answer that come into your head, okay? Are you ready for that?
I'm ready.
Awesome. So first question, if you could have dinner with any historical leader, who would it be and why?
Oh, historical figure. I think the historical figure that I'd want to have dinner with would be it would be Jesus. I think that as a historical figure and what he did in the world is just fascinating to me, and like the impact that 2,000 years after his death, that he still has resonance and transformational implications. And I would love to just be able to sit and have a conversation and to see, because he never held a political office, never wrote a book, never really moved more than, I don't know, just a few hundred miles away from his birthplace. So very central, geographically bound, but yet the impact around the world is really fascinating. It's really fascinating.
Yes, and his message is all about just treating us, everyone like the godchild that we are, right? And that we shouldn't be limited to anything, and innovation is one of that. So love that answer. Second question, what's one book on leadership that you recommend to everyone?
Oh, I have so many books on leadership. That's a tough question to ask, but I think I would say, because we've been talking about creativity and innovation, I would say The 15 Invaluable Laws of Growth. It's a book by John Maxwell. In fact, if for the recording, I actually have it right here. You can tell it's well loved. I read this one often. But I think the principles are very universal. And if we want to be able to be in that space where we can be in a place where we are continually growing and innovating and creative for ourselves, this is a great book that is helpful for teams and leaders. And it's like, here's what I can do. And when you start living those principles, then you're able to help others in your team and in your organization to be able to do that as well.
The last question, if you had to sum up your leadership philosophy in one sentence, what would it be?
Leadership philosophy, I would say everyone has value. I think it's the fact that every person has value, and part really where we started our conversation. And when the more that we understand how each person is created and uniquely made and is so valuable just as they are, that is going to help us I think we have the ability to literally transform the world. And so I think everyone has value, and we need to find that in ourselves and be able to pull that out of others as well.
Love that. So everyone, we all have our Genesis in us. So Genesis, where can people find you online?
Yes. So you can find me. I'm on all of the social channels. Of course, my team takes care of a lot of that, but I do a lot on LinkedIn. So you are welcome to follow me on LinkedIn. Definitely, I check those ones myself. So you can rest assured there are some AI responses on some of the things, but LinkedIn, I check myself. And you can also find me at genesiseakesinternational.com. That's the website. So feel free to, there's resources there. And if anyone wants to reach out and connect, happy to connect through those sources.
All right, that's all for today's episode of Rise with AI. A huge thank you to you for sharing your insights into transformational leadership and also building people-centric cultures. So listeners, if this episode actually inspires you, feel free to actually go and visit Genesis and share it with someone who needs to hear it. Okay, subscribe for more conversations with leaders in the e-learning and professional training. Until next time, keep reaching, impacting, skilling, and empowering. See you guys soon.